Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere a little grim. But don't worry, you're already doomed. The year is somewhere between vaguely remembered and willfully ignored. You're in a nameless European town with cobbled streets that seem older than sin and just as unforgiving on bare souls. The sky is grey. It's always grey. You've arrived with little more than a wooden trunk, a dubious reputation, and an outfit that makes you look like a crow on probation. Welcome to your new job as the town plague doctor. There's just one issue. There is no plague. You are early. Historically early. Premature. Even the town council, in a display of uncharacteristic proactivity, has decided to hire a plague doctor before the disease arrives, just in case, like lighting a fire before winter, like buying a coffin for someone who only has a mild cough. It's precautionary, and you are the walking symbol of that deeply unsettling precaution. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and what time it is as you're watching. I'd love to know who else is wandering through the 14th century half asleep with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step off the cart. The driver doesn't even look back. That's fair, you didn't pay him. Your boots hit the stone. There's already a smut of something unidentifiable on the toe. You are in the town square. Or what passes for it. A tilted fountain trickles. Green water that might once have been blessed. Round you, shutters click shut. Children scatter. A goose hisses. You haven't said a word, but your presence is unwelcome. The town clerk meets you like someone forced to greet an in-law. He hands you a key, his scroll, and a look of mild disappointment. You'll be staying in the old gravedigger's quarters, he mutters, since it's vacant. He means the last gravedigger fell in. You try to nod professionally while adjusting your mask. The leather snout dips dramatically and knocks your own shoulder. Graceful start. Inside. The air is thick with the scent of cedar, mildew, and something that might be old soup. The gravedigger's quarters are technically habitable if your definition includes roof with holes in it, a small cot, a rickety desk, a basin with what might be soap. This is your base of operations. You're already itchy. The soap stares at you with judgment. You unpack slowly. A notebook, a bottle of vinegar, some dried rosemary for your mask, a small wooden charm that may or may not have been a joke gift. No one told you what to bring. You brought everything and nothing. Your best friend, a fellow student from medical school who went on to become a proper physician in Paris once, told you, don't specialize in plague work. It's all waiting and no applause. You ignored him, of course, because you're ambitious, and maybe a little broke. Outside, a dog barks endlessly. Inside, a mouse investigates your bread. You swat it gently. It refuses to be intimidated. You are not the most terrifying creature in this room. You examine the town map hand-drawn. Naturally, there's the town square, the apothecary, a small church, several unlabeled buildings drawn as squiggles. At the bottom, in smudged charcoal, someone scrawled probable latrine. You trace the route to your assigned workspace, the physician's annex. It sounds promising. Until you learn it's next to the stable. You venture out, stepping around suspicious puddles, dodging villagers who give you an 8-foot radius of distrust. Your cloak swishes impressively. Your mask, though not required right now, is strapped to your face because you're trying to establish authority, or mystique, or maybe you're hiding a pimple on your nose. Either way, it works. A child cries at the sight of you. You wave gently. This does not help. Your annex is, unsurprisingly, locked. The key sticks. The door moans inside. Dust motes dance in the sunlight, untouched by cleaning or care. 1 table, 3 cobwebs. 0 instruments. A single stool sits in the corner. Offended to be here. There is no patient, no assistant, not even a sick chicken. You are truly alone in your medical brilliance, and yet there is protocol. You lay out your supplies with reverence. As if someone might inspect them, you review the town's plague preparedness scroll, which appears to be a list of vague recommendations such as burn linens and pray harder. You underline both. They're bound to come up. You try to make yourself useful. You walk the streets slowly, nodding solemnly at people who cross themselves at the sight of you. You pretend to check the air, as if sensing something. You peer at the river and write. Water. Murky. Possibly cursed. You have filled 2 pages of your journal by noon. One of them is entirely a sketch of a duck wearing a mask, the local. Baker offers you a loaf of bread and a question. Is the plague here yet? You shake your head. Not yet. He nods solemnly and backs away. You do not get the bread. Later, in the churchyard, you examine headstones. Most are old, some are wrong, and one says simply, oops. You sit for a moment on a stone bench. The only comfortable surface in this entire county, and think about what you're doing here. You are a symbol of fear in a town that hasn't earned it. You are a reminder of what might happen. And people don't like reminders. Back at the gravedigger's hut, the candle sputters. You scratch at a flea bite. The air smells of smoke and damp wool. You write in your journal. Day 1, town healthy, and certain. You sign it with a flourish. You do not feel the irony of your situation is not lost on you. You studied anatomy, learned about humors, even practiced emergency bloodletting on a turnip. And now, you are hired not to heal, but to exist, to be ominous. Like a thundercloud that never quite breaks, historians still argue whether early plague doctors did more harm than good. But here, you are doing nothing at all, which is somehow worse. Your presence is preventative, or performative, or possibly just ornamental. A robed reminder that fate could be cruel someday. But not today. You lie in bed, staring at the wood. Beams above you. One is cracked. You are not sure if it's structurally or emotionally. You think about the mask resting beside you, its beak pointing at the ceiling. You wonder if tomorrow will be different, or if it will just be another day of theatrical medicine for invisible threats. Somewhere outside, the goose hisses again. You close your eyes. You wake to the smell of leather and regret. The gravedigger's cot has not improved overnight. If anything, it has developed a new creak, timed perfectly to each exhale like a metronome of minor suffering. The sun has barely climbed over the horizon. But already the rooster is shouting its usual existential despair outside your window. You pull on your boots, still damp, and feel yesterday's mud squish gently against your heel. It's a full-body wince moment. The day begins. Getting dressed. You quickly discover that being a plague doctor is less about medicine and more about wrestling yourself into submission. The layers are relentless. First, the woolen undershirt, stiff with yesterday's sweat and someone else's tailing mistakes. Then the thick breeches, which scratch like enthusiastic sandpaper and never seem to close quite right. You tuck in the undershirt. It pops out again. You pretend that's fine. Next comes the long overcoat, black, heavy, waxed against weather and optimism. It was clearly designed by someone who had never worn clothes or met a human. The sleeves are too short, the hem too long, and the collar does a fantastic job of choking you whenever you move. Then of course the gloves, they're goatskin. Allegedly, they also have the texture of boiled parchment and the delightful scent of a barn on fire. You shove your hands in with the grace of a man trying to win a bet. But the piece de resistance, the symbol of your station and your misery, is the mask, the beaked mask, iconic and absurd. Stares at you from its perch on the desk. You pick it up and immediately regret doing so without gloves. The inside is humid. Somehow, you wedge in your dried herbs, rosemary, lavender, a pinch of rumint to purify the air, or at least distract you from the smell of your own breath. You strap it on. The leather pulls at your ears. You can hear your own nose whistle. You are now officially a walking metaphor. Wearing the mask is like trying to breathe inside a bread oven. It muffles sound, flattens your vision, and fogs your thoughts. You practice turning your head slowly, dramatically. The corner of the room blurs. You knock over a stool. Symbolic elegance ruined, and yet you must wear it. The town expects it. A man without a bird mask is just a man. But a man with a bird mask, that's someone to fear, or at least avoid. You step outside, and the world reacts. A woman fetching water clutches her bucket to her chest and retreats. Behind a cot, a boy on a rooftop pelts you with a piece of stale bread, not out of protest, you suspect, but just because it's Wednesday. The bread hits your shoulder and bounces off like a sad croton. You do not acknowledge it. This is your dignity now. Your assignment today is nothing. Officially, observation, and officially, loitering in costume. You decide to make a round of the town, slow and theatrical, dragging your shadow behind you like a prophecy. You pass the butcher, who has hung his wares with extra garlic today. You give him a nod. He pretends to adjust a sausage across the way. The apothecary closes his shutters with a look that says, "Please don't speak to me." You were classmates once. He got the shop. You got the mask. There's a general sense that people think the mask keeps the plague away, like it wards off evil by looking mildly evil itself. Some say the herbs inside can cleanse bad air. Others just think you're a human, a walking, bird-faced domino, doom. So naturally, no one invites you to lunch. You pause near the tavern. Inside, laughter, mugs clink. Someone is singing a song that includes the word pustle in a surprisingly upbeat way. You are not welcome there either. You turn and walk on. The beak of your mask slicing through the morning fog like a slow, disapproving knife. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were truly doctors or just desperate men in robes. Some were trained, some were volunteers, some were barely literate and knew more about leeches than lungs. You had training, sort of. Your mentor once demonstrated a tooth extraction using pliers and a firm prayer. You passed your final exam with a speech on the importance of clean linens, which you now understand was mostly theoretical. At the edge of town, you visit the old well. No one uses it anymore. It's rumored to be cursed, or at least inconvenient. You peer inside. Darkness. A crew perches nearby and eyes you with something close to professional respect. You tip your mask in greeting. The crow tips its head back. You suspect it has better job security than you do. The weight of your garments begins to press on your shoulders. You've been wearing the full outfit for over 2 hours. And you feel like you've aged at least 5. The gloves stick. The coat chafes. The herbs inside your mask have wilted into a soggy clump of disillusionment. You smell like a haunted salad. You pause on a bench near the chapel. The priest pauses and blesses you hurriedly, as though your presence might summon something. You give a stiff wave. A woman with a basket of apples turns away and crosses herself. You hear someone whisper the word harbinger. You are a stranger in a familiar place. A man approaches, rare enough too. Be noteworthy, and asks if you can help with his sore tooth. You nod solemnly. He opens his mouth. It is a landscape. 3 teeth remain. 2 of them are in hiding. The third looks rebellious. You offer him vinegar and advise gargling. He smiles like someone who's already lost the war and shuffles off. Your mask hides your wince. Later, back in your quarters, you peel off the mask like removing a second face. Your hair is damp. Your neck smells of desperation and wool. You sit on the cot and scratch at a line of mosquito bites blooming across your shin. You miss not knowing what mildew tastes like. You review your journal. Today's entry: town healthy, mask unbearable. One man with tooth situation resembling battlefield. Still no plague. You sketch a picture of the crow. It looks more composed than you feel as night falls. The candle flickers. You hear singing in the distance, and for a moment, you imagine what it might be like to be invited somewhere, to be useful, needed, not just tolerated in leather. You lie down, still in your shirt. Too tired to remove it, the cot sighs beneath you. Your feet ache. Your breath is tinged with rosemary. You wonder if your training will ever matter. Outside, the wind picks up. A shutter bangs in the distance. Inside, the mask waits, empty and ready. You wake before dawn, not from a sense of duty, but because a mouse ran across your face. It's unclear who was more startled you, flailing beneath your blanket like a man being exercised, or the mouse who launches off your forehead and disappears under the cot with the confidence of a tenant exercising squatter's rights. You lie there in the darkness, pulse galloping, staring at the low ceiling, wondering how your life turned into a combination of pest control and COSPLAY. Outside, it's still night. Or perhaps morning's earliest compromise. The moon has surrendered, but the sun isn't committed. You light your candle, eyes watering in protest, and begin your ritual. Scratch, stretch, regret, dress. Your cloak from yesterday is still damp. The air in your quarters is thick with that distinctive scent wool that's tried too hard. You consider hanging it out to dry, but then remember, everyone avoids you already. A cloak flapping outside might draw attention, and not the good kind. More the witchcraft-adjacent laundry kind. So you put it on. It clings like a cold memory. Today's plan, according to the town scroll you've unofficially adopted as your job description, is still observation. No sick to treat, no bodies to examine, no fires to start in alleyways to cleanse the air, as was trendy in plague-heavy cities. You are, again, an unpaid actor in a performance that no one wants to see. The mask sits on the desk, leering at you like a smug leather bird. You consider skipping it just this once. But the moment you step outside without it, you're greeted by a gasp from a passing merchant and the whispered phrase, "He's not wearing his omen." You go back inside and strap it on. The herbs inside have begun fermenting slightly. Congratulations. You are now smelling like a sour medieval salad. Today, you decide to visit the healer's hut on the outskirts of town. Technically, she's not licensed. Officially, she's a woman of herbs, and officially, the church calls her something else, and you pretend not to hear. You figure if anyone might offer a glimpse into local ailments, it's her. The walk is long. Your boots suction to the muddy road like clingy regrets. Every step is an effort. Remember that damp tunic. It's still damp. It may always be damp. The path winds past empty fields, through a grove of half-dead trees that all look like they're shrugging in confusion. Birds watch you pass. A squirrel drops an acorn on your shoulder. You are nature's nuisance now. At the hut, the healer meets you with suspicion wrapped in floral print. She doesn't speak, just squints at your mask and gestures vaguely at the space around you, as if to say, you can stand there or vanish. You nod. You mime a greeting. She continues squinting. Eventually, she offers you a small vial of something green and viscous. You ask, by gesture, if it's for the plague. She shakes her head. Goose bites. She says, you nod solemnly and pocket it. You may need it later. Back in town, a new rumor has spread. A chicken coughed. A boy tells you this breathlessly. As if announcing the return of a king, you are immediately summoned by a panicked homeowner who insists his poultry is unwell. You attend. The chicken is fine. It is eating a beetle with the enthusiasm of a tax collector. Still, you perform a solemn inspection, gently lifting one wing. Nodding as if it reveals ancient wisdom, the homeowner nods back, relieved. You write chicken, stable. Potential dramatic tendencies in your journal. Historians still argue whether the plague spread more through rats or airborne particles. In this case, it might be gossip. The entire town is vibrating with possibility. You are their confirmation bias with legs. Later, a boy throws a pebble at your back and yells, "Where the sickness?" Birdman. You turn slowly. He runs. You make a note to walk faster next time, or find a longer stick. You stop by the bakery. Where no one speaks to you, you purchase a stale loaf using a coin no one checks. Your fingers smell of glove. Your gloves smell of everything else. The loaf cracks in half as you bite it. Your gums bleed slightly. You pretend not to notice. There's a dog that's been following you for hours. It's missing a chunk of it and has the energy of someone who's seen too much. You feed it a piece of bread. It sniffs it, sneezes, and walks away. You are no one's hero. Midday arrives. You sit at the fountain, mask removed briefly for the first time, hoping no one sees. A woman approaches with a bowl of stew. You stiffen, unsure whether this is generosity or bait. She sets it down without a word and walks away. You stare at the bowl. It steams like it's being interrogated. You eat. It tastes like kindness mixed with turnip. The best meal you've had in days. You scribble more in your journal. Stew, chicken drama. Goose bite remedy acquired. Still no plague. Your candle burns low as evening falls. You reapply your herbal mask stuffing this time with some of the green goose bite remedy mixed in, just to see. The result is minty and wrong. You sit on the edge of your cot, staring at your gloves. They sit like tired hands waiting for someone else's life. You try to remember why you chose this path. Was it to help people? To make money? To be important? You suspect it was simply to feel needed, but without sickness, without panic, without anything real to fix. You feel like a man wearing a bandage for a wound the town doesn't have yet. You hear laughter outside. Someone's telling a joke about you. You catch the word beak. You sigh. The mouse returns briefly, sniffs your journal, and vanishes again. Even the pests have errands. You lie back. The cot creaks its familiar protest. The air smells of herbs, stew, leather, and effort. You close your eyes. You dream of coughing chickens and green rivers and walking through crowds that never turn to face you. You are the shape of a fear that hasn't arrived yet. The fourth morning starts with a sneeze, not yours, mercifully, but close enough to launch you out of bed like a poorly loaded catapult. You sit upright, heart racing, hair crooked, eyes scanning the gloom for a source. It turns out to be a pigeon outside your window. A healthy pigeon, possibly smug. You fall back into your lumpy pillow with a groan so deep it might qualify as a minor seismic event. Once again, it's time to dress for a job that remains glorified loitering. The routine now takes on the rhythm of ritual. Tunic, coat, gloves, mask. Each layer binds you not just physically, but existentially. Like wrapping oneself in a contract. With fate, you strap on the mask last, your vision narrowing, breath fogging the already herbal-stained interior. A fresh blend today. Lavender, sage, and a single crushed walnut for confidence. It doesn't help. Today's task. Assess the air quality, which in plague-prepared towns. Means sniffing and judging the vibes. You start by pacing slowly through the market square, hands behind your back like a professor giving up on undergraduates. You pause near the fishmonger. He is clearly not thrilled. You'll scare off the customers. He mumbles. You point wordlessly to the mackerel and raise an eyebrow, which is unfortunately hidden behind 3 layers of mask. The fish stares back, judgment neutral. Down the road, you pass the laundress's corner, where steam rises from pots of boiling garments. You take a long, deliberate inhale through the mask. It smells like wet linen, regret, and faint optimism. You scribble in your notebook, near soap, hopeful. That's about as scientific as it gets. And then you visit the latrines. There is no page in your training manuals for this. There is no dignified way to document the air here. Still, you breathe through your mask and do your duty. North wall privy, unwell, potential for early symptoms of collapsed structural, not biological. A man passing by sees you jotting in your notebook and immediately whispers to a friend. Within 20 minutes, someone reports that the doctor has detected plague near the toilets. By afternoon, no one will use them. You've accidentally invented public sanitation. You didn't mean to, but you also don't correct anyone. You're tired, damp, and vaguely hungry. Let the toilets have their moment of fame. Historians still argue whether plague doctors contributed to public health improvements or merely wandered ominously. Based on your mourning, it's looking like the latter, though you'll take credit for any improvements to latrine safety. Around midday, a man brings you a goat, not for treatment, as a gift. For keeping the sickness away, the goat smells like wet rope and contempt. You thank him with a nod, and he leaves. You are now a plague doctor with a goat. This was not covered in training. You name the goat herbs. It immediately tries to eat your mask. You tether herbs behind your annex, and wonder if this is the beginning of a reputation. Perhaps in 100 years, someone will write about the masked man with the mysterious goat. Or not. Your annex is somehow more dusty than yesterday. A cobweb has reappeared in the exact place you removed it yesterday, as if taunting you. The rat is still living rent-free. You consider charging it a consultation fee. You spend an hour reorganizing jars you'll never use, vinegar, garlic, a powder labeled Fortitude. You spill the Fortitude by accident. It turned out to be flour. You decide not to report this. A woman visits briefly with her husband, who has a cough. You tense up finally. Something. You perform a gentle inspection, checking his pulse, eyes, tongue. He has been eating moldy bread. That's it. You recommend less bread, more broth. He nods. She insists on paying you with 2 onions and an egg. You now have a goat, 2 onions and 1 egg. Your fortune grows. You write in your journal. No plague, possibly indigestion. Public latrine improved. Gained goat. That evening, you sit on the stone bench by the chapel again. The air is warmer tonight, carrying with it the scent of lilacs, and someone roasting turnips nearby. Your mask hangs loosely round your neck. No one bothers you here. You think of your old tutor, who once told you, a good doctor sees the invisible. You suspect he meant symptoms, not boredom. But still, you're watching, listening, waiting. The goat bleats in the distance. It's the most meaningful conversation you've had all day. You return to your quarters and inspect your reflection in a cracked mirror. You look tired, not in the noble, selfless way, but in the will to derb. Slept on straw kind of way. Your eyes are ringed. Your shoulders slumped. Still. You're here, showing up, present for a crisis that hasn't yet booked its appointment. You lie down, cradling your journal on your chest. The flickering candle casts a long, bird-shaped shadow on the wall for a moment. You let your thoughts drift. You imagine the plague does come. The town rallies. You spring into action. Your name is remembered. Then you imagine the plague never comes. The town forgets you. The mask gathers dust. Your goat outlives you. Either way, you're here, and the pigeon sneezes again. You wake up disappointed that you're still healthy. It's a strange feeling, but an honest one. You spend weeks in this town as a symbolic warning, and nothing has happened. No epidemic, no panic, not even a respectable rash. You're a plague doctor with no plague, which is starting to feel a lot like being a chimney sweep in a dessert. Ubbs the goat greets you with a low, judgmental bleat from the back of the annex. He has chewed through half your laundry line and 3 pages of your notes. You retrieve the surviving fragments of your journal and sigh. Yesterday's entry. No visible illness. Acquired goat. Latrine stabilized. Now ends abruptly with latrine. And a tooth mark. You go through the motions anyway. Tunic, cloak, gloves, the mask, stuffed with fresh rosemary and a few crushed mint leaves for a theatrical Christmas. You strap it on, take a deep breath, and promptly sneeze. The mint hits harder than expected. Your goat blinks at you, unimpressed. Today's priority is responding to a reported death. You feel a jolt of excitement, not because someone has died, of course, but because, finally, your role might have substance. You hurry well, shuffle with purpose across town. The path to the deceased is muddy. It has rained overnight, and your boots are absorbing the experience one squelch at a time. The house is simple, timber-framed, crooked with age, and smelling faintly of onions and dread. A weeping neighbor directs you inside with a gesture that might also be a blessing. The man is lying peacefully on a straw mattress. You approach slowly. He is wrapped in a blanket, arms folded. You perform your examination with the gravity of someone accustomed to tragedy, pulse absent. Eyes closed, temperature very cold. All the classics. Then someone coughs from the next room. You turn. A woman mid-30s, frazzled appears. He's not dead, she says, wiping her hands on an apron. He just sleeps like that. He drank too much turnip wine last night. You nod solemnly. Backing away from the body, the man snores. Lightly. You add a note to your journal. Turnip wine equals false alarm. Back in the square, someone is shouting about a black lump behind the bakery. You investigate. It's a cat sitting on a pile of soot. The cat glares at you. You retreat. The town, it seems, is desperate for symptoms. You are now their confessor, absorbing every misplaced sneeze, every itchy elbow, every sinister vegetable. One woman insists her carrots are growing in a sickly curve. You take her word for it. You spend the afternoon documenting these curiosities. Today's list includes a man who claimed his freckles are multiplying maliciously, a pig with one ear colder than the other, a puddle shaped vaguely like a skull. You rate each one as non-contagious, though the pig is still under review. Historians still argue whether fear spreads faster than infection. Judging by the townspeople, fear wins in a landslide. They look to you for guidance, reassurance, and occasionally, someone to hold their bucket of questionable OINTMENTS. By evening, you're tired of pretending to be helpful. You remove your mask and sit near the bakery. A young girl offers you a small apple tart without making eye contact. You accept, grateful, and take a bite. It's the best thing you've eaten all week. It tastes like sugar and kindness. You return to your quarters, feet aching, cloak damp. You write. No death. One unconscious man. Puddle shaped like despair. Still no plague. You sketch the pig. Then for reasons unknown. You write a poem in the margins of your notes, O goat of gloom, with bleeding bold. You chew my thoughts, you smell of mold, yet in your eyes a wisdom deep. You know the plague prefers to sleep. It's not good poetry, but it's honest. Later, you lie awake listening to the sounds of the town. A cart creaks by, a child giggles, someone yells at a chicken. All signs of health, all signs you're not needed. You roll over, sighing into your straw-filled pillow. The mask stares at you from the chair, like an unpaid actor waiting for a scene that may never arrive. Still, you prepare. Still, you show up, because when the sickness comes, you'll be ready. But not tonight. Tonight, you're just a man with a goat, a poem, and an audience of cobwebs. You begin your 6th day with a profound sense of purpose, which lasts until you stub your toe on a chamber pot. The pain is immediate and undignified. You hop in circles, cursing the layout of your own room silently. Of course, because you're a professional, the pot remains unmoved, smug in its offensive stillness. You vow revenge and then forget about it 10 minutes later when your left boot won't fit properly. The toe is swelling. Wonderful. You dress slower today, less because of injury and more from a sort of creeping apathy. The mask is heavier than usual, not in weight, but in concept. You stuff it with thyme and a bit of citrus peel stolen from the market. The herbs don't mask the scent so much as compete with it. The result is something between funeral wreath and spoiled lemonade. You trudge toward your office, which remains a single broom closet with a desk, one crooked stool, and a mouse hole that now has a tiny pile of breadcrumbs just inside it. You haven't decided if you're feeding the mouse out of pity or loneliness, possible at both. The town council has sent a message. Today, you are to formally inspect your medical wing. You are both confused and amused. You didn't realize you had a medical wing. When you arrive, you realize no one else did either. It's not a wing. It's an abandoned storage shed next to the stables. The sign above it reads former tannery, and the scent confirms this. Inside, a wooden bench, a bucket, and a moldy curtain attempting to divide the room into observation and treatment. You name the curtain Maurice. There is one window, covered in grime. You scratch at it and let in a sliver of sunlight, which promptly reveals more dust than air. You cough, then remember you're the doctor, and pretend the cough was diagnostic. You spend the next hour reorganizing imaginary supplies. You pretend to sterilize the bucket. You inspect the bench for plague-adjacent splinters. You add a small label to the door that reads Quarantine Annex in your best dramatic handwriting. Later, someone brings you a child with a mysterious rash. You stiffen. Finally, a case. The rash turned out to be jam. Specifically, berry. The child confesses under pressure, and by pressure, we mean his mother threatening to cancel berry season. You nod gravely and prescribe soap. You do not bill them, but you do write. Patient number 001, diagnosed with excessive preserves. Prognosis, sticky. Historians still argue whether plague doctors contributed meaningfully to patient care or simply loitered in ominous silence. You, on the other hand, are setting new records for jam-related recovery. The rest of the day is spent in a strange limbo of false alarms. Someone faints near the church, just fatigue. A shopkeeper reports seeing a ghost in his root cellar just. His wife in a nightgown. A donkey sneezes and causes mild hysteria at the well. Through it all, you remain visible, calm, masked, an oddly shaped lighthouse in a stormless sea. You try to hold on to your dignity. You check in with the apothecary, who still won't meet your eye but begrudgingly offers you a tiny vial of something yellow and unidentifiable. Just in case, he mutters. You accept it like it's gold. You'll never use it, but it feels like medicine, and right now, you'll take anything that makes this feel real. Back in your broom closet annex, you eat a cold onion with half an egg and stare at the wall. You scratch a tiny telly into the wood. Day 6. You write in your journal. No cases. One berry incident. One haunted cellar. Medical wing established, sort of. You sketch the curtain and label it Maurice outside. The sun is slipping behind the chapel spire, casting long, soft shadows across the square. The cobblestones look like a mosaic of patience and pointlessness. You walk a slow loop round the fountain. A boy watches you from a rooftop, pretending not to. You make a point of examining the air. You raise your mask slightly, as if consulting. The wind. It smells like turnips and wet brick. You nod solemnly and walk on. Performative medicine at its finest. As darkness settles, you return to your quarters. You kick the chamber pot on purpose this time. It doesn't make you feel better. You remove your gloves, then the cloak, and finally the mask. Your face beneath it is flushed energy. You splash water on your cheeks. You don't recognize yourself without the beak. You lie on your back, staring at the ceiling, which seems to be growing a new crack. You count your breath. You try to remember your first day here, your optimism, your silent vow to serve. Now, you mostly serve as a reminder, and yet, you're still here. You whisper to the mouse hole. Any symptoms? Silence. Typical. You close your eyes. The room exhales with you. You wake up to the sound of your goat coughing. This, naturally, sets off a full-bodied panic. You spring from bed, one sock on, hair flattened on one side like a collapsed tent. Urbs bleats again, short, sharp, and suspiciously phlegmy. You scramble outside in your nightshirt. Half a glove dangling from your hand, heart pounding with the fervor of someone who's been waiting far too long for the end to begin. Urbs is fine. He's just chewing a particularly dry patch of hay and making a show of it. You stare at him for a full minute, half expecting his pupils to spiral into darkness or for him to start coughing Latin. He farts instead. You go back inside and pull on your now permanently damp tunic. Your left boot still hates your toe. You limp toward your mirror, adjust your mask, and whisper, "Today, we do something." The directive today is as vague as ever. Continue making yourself useful, which, in a town without owners, means inventing tasks until someone either pays you or tells you to stop. So, you begin conducting fake inspections. Your first visit is to the butcher, who sighs the moment he sees you. "I'm not sick," he says flatly. You nod slowly, then walk round the shop, poking at hooks and sniffing cured meat through your beak. You produce a small notebook and write something intentionally illegible. You nod again, this time more bravely, and leave. At the apothecary's shop. You simply stand outside for 20 minutes without moving. Eventually, he comes out and gives you a small pouch of ground bark and a piece of cheese. Presumably just to make you leave. You add it to your supplies. You are not proud. By mid-morning, word has spread. The plague doctor is conducting silent evaluations. Suddenly, you're in demand. His seamstress invites you to examine her thread storage. A brewer nervously asks you to test the yeast. A man with suspiciously clean fingernails offers you a bottle of rainwater and whispers, "Tell me if it's safe." You nod, take a sip, and declare, temporarily unthreatening, "It's your best performance yet." You document everything. A door with a squeaky hinge becomes a potential site of airborne transmission. A cracked bowl is labeled epidemiologically unstable. You recommend 3 people rest to change their diet, and 1 relocate his outhouse. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were more bureaucrat than healer. Today, you are definitely the former. You are writing a thesis of make-believe on a community entirely free of crisis. Around noon, a woman brings her husband in to see you. He sweats at night. She whispers, eyes wide. You examine him carefully. He's wearing 3 tunics and standing next to a fire. You recommend fewer layers and perhaps one less sheep in the bed. She thanks you profusely. He looks betrayed. Your status grows by the hour. People begin to greet you not with fear, but cautious respect. You still don't get invited to dinner, but someone leaves a bowl of broth outside your annex. You eat it cold and it tastes vaguely of potato and deep-seated suspicion. You savor it anyway. You update your journal. Community engaged. Fake. Inspection successful. Broth acquired. Goat remains uncooperative. You sketch a diagram of the apothecary's facial expression. It's mostly eyebrows. Back in your broom closet. The rat has left a chestnut on your stool. You accept this as a peace offering you will possibly rent. You place it beside your vial of yellow mystery fluid and label it gift from pest non-lethal. Pending. You hang your cloak with care, smoothing the shoulders as if it's a companion. You clean your mask with a damp cloth and stuff it with a blend of rose petals and straw. It smells like someone romanticized a barn dot as night falls. You find yourself invited well, tolerated at the edge of a bonfire gathering outside the tavern. You stand at a distance, watching the flames, feeling the heat through your mask. A child hands you a roasted chestnut. You don't eat it. You hold it like an artifact. You're not one of them. But you're not entirely an outsider anymore. When you return to your quarters, Herbs is asleep, tail twitching. You step over him, careful not to wake the alleged disease vector. You lie on your cot, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much of your role is real and how much is just theater. You hope, quietly, that it never becomes real. That your fake inspections remain fake, that the puddles never become biohazards, that you continue to be unnecessary. Because the only thing worse than being irrelevant is being needed. You wake up feeling strangely accomplished. This, of course, is suspicious. You sit up slowly, expecting something to go wrong. Maybe Herbs the goat has eaten your cloak. Maybe the annex has burned down. Maybe the actual plague has arrived and decided to start with you. But no, everything is exactly as it was. Your tunic is still itchy. Your left boot still hates you. Your medical wing still a broom closet is quiet. And your goat is chewing on a shoe that, thankfully, isn't yours. Still. You can't shake the feeling that you've tricked the town and maybe yourself into believing you're a functioning part of public health. Today, that illusion will need maintenance, because your latest duty is hygiene inspections. Now, let's be clear. Medieval hygiene is less about sanitation and more about rearranging dirt. Most people here bathe once per season. Twice if they're wealthy and suspiciously clean. You, the person hired to handle the plague, are now expected to critique the cleanliness of people who think soap is a rumor. So you start with the baker. He's flour-covered, sweaty, and proud of it. You nod respectfully and sniff a nearby broom handle for no discernible reason. You write flour density, critical in your journal, and move on. Next, the candle maker. His workspace is a wax-covered cave of heat and smoke. He offers you a beeswax sample and a fact you didn't ask for. Bees sometimes sting mid-pour. You nod and write. Bees uncooperative, potential vector of irritation. The third stop is the BATHHOUSC. You didn't even know the town had one. Technically, it doesn't. It's an empty wine barrel in the back of a tavern, filled once a week with warm water and wishful thinking. You approach just in time to witness someone exiting the barrel with a triumphant grin and exactly one sock. You perform a theatrical air sniff, take a step back and write. Sanitation. Symbolic. By now. People are watching your rounds with interest. Children point at your mask and whisper. Adults straighten their backs, adjust their bonnets, subtly rub their armpits on their sleeves. You have become the living embodiment of judgment. Disguised as a bird, and then you are summoned to a real case. A woman has developed something. You hurry well. Hobble briskly and arrive to find her sitting upright, surrounded by 5 relatives, a priest, and one guy holding a chicken for no apparent reason. You assess the situation with care. The symptoms: slight redness on her arm. No fever. Alert. No swelling. You ask about her diet. She's been eating salted fish exclusively for 3 weeks. You recommend water, fresh greens, and fewer sermons. The priest seems mildly offended. The chicken remains neutral. You note it all in your journal. Patient number 02, probable brine overdose, chicken inconclusive, later. A man approaches with a complaint that's not quite medical. There's something wrong with my personality. He says. You pause. I don't like turnips anymore. He explains. You ask what he had for dinner. Turnips. He replies. You recommend variety. He looks relieved. You wonder how many problems you're solving simply by acknowledging them. You begin to suspect the mask isn't protection, it's projection. You radiate control, or at least the promise of it, and people want that. Historians still debate whether plague doctors acted more like healers, therapists, or psychological props today. You're clearly the third, and maybe the second. You're not fixing bodies, you're soothing panic. And then the merchant with the foot shows up. He lifts his boot, peels off a sock, and reveals something. You're not sure what. It looks like an overcooked dumpling in the shape of remorse. He asks if it's fatal. You squint. You circle the foot like it might explode. You recommend keeping it dry, maybe not showing it to people. He nods as if you've just saved his soul. You reward yourself with a pastry from the baker. It's slightly burnt and tastes like exhaustion, but it's warm. You sit on the bench and eat it slowly. Mask lifted just enough to breathe. A girl pauses and drops a flower in your lap. You don't look up. You just write. Kindness detected. Back in your annex. You remove your gloves and inspect your own hands. They're rough. Now, calloused. You don't remember when that happened. You write your report with careful strokes, each word anchoring your day in something resembling structure. You end it with, no plague, mild foot emergency, brine fatigue. Mask remains effective at social regulation. Then, almost as an afterthought, you sketch the wine barrel bath and caption it. Hope, lukewarm. That night, you lie in bed and listen to the distant sound of someone laughing. Not the cruel kind. The tired, real kind. You smile under the blanket. Herbs bleats from outside. You whisper, I'm not washing you. The goat sneezes. You wake up convinced that today is the day someone brings you an actual medical mystery. This delusion lasts for about 6 minutes, until you're called to examine a man who insists he's got ghosts in his liver. You arrive with all the appropriate gravity. The man gestures to his stomach, which is impressively round, and explains that he feels haunted specifically, by a tingling sensation that gets worse when he drinks ale and better when he sits down. You resist the urge to diagnose him with snacking while drunk. Instead, you murmur something about humoral imbalance and recommend fewer beans and less superstition. He thanks you like you've just exorcised a demon. Back at the annex, you find that Herbs has chewed through a corner of your notes again. You now have a page that reads, recommend a goat unqual footberry. It's practically poetry. You pat Herbs on the head. He tries to eat your glove. You sit at your desk. Stare at the candle stub you've been reusing for days, and begin updating your treatise, which is a very generous term for what's essentially your private list of absurdities. Today's entry begins, treating the theatrical, a field guide for doctors of nothing in towns of less. You've begun categorizing your patients by theatricality, the sufferer, genuinely irre the fi. Philosopher thinks a bad mood is a fatal condition. A collector brings you all their symptoms like a scrapbook symptomless prophet, insists they will be ill any day. Now today you meet one from each category. The philosopher is a man who believes the breeze has opinions about him. The collector brings in a box of scabs not his own. And the prophet, she asks if you think sneezing at dusk is an omen. You answer, yes, of night. They all leave satisfied. You feel like a traveling therapist with a very spooky hat. And then comes the parade of remedies. You hadn't expected it, but suddenly you're inundated with requests to verify cures. Everyone's cousin has a potion, and everyone's aunt has an oil. The most memorable is a man selling plague-preventing dance powders. You ask how it works. He demonstrates a jig so alarming it startles a nearby chicken. You write, confirmed. Dancing is contagious. Efficacy against plague unverified. A woman offers you a salve made of boiled figs and pigeon breath. You smile politely and do not. Ask about the pigeon. The town blacksmith, a man with forearms like cured ham, insists you sample his grandmother's preventative brew. It contains garlic, vinegar, and what you strongly suspect is lamp oil. You decline. He drinks it himself and immediately hiccups for a few minutes. Still no plague. Historians still argue whether medieval cures were symbolic rituals or early public health efforts. You're beginning to suspect they were mostly hobbies. By mid-afternoon, you find yourself performing one of your most ridiculous duties, supervising the town's air purification protocol. This involves a barrel filled with smoldering herbs and someone waving a chicken feather fan to stir the purity. You are not sure if this is real science or elaborate performance art. You nod gravely through the smoke. Your mask filters out the worst of it, though now your beak smells strongly of thyme and failure. After the ritual, someone offers you a bowl of something called boiled quirky. It tastes like turnip broth left too long in the sun. You finish it out of politeness. Regret sets in immediately. You sit in your office closet to recover. A child peeks through the curtain. Maurice. You wave with your mask on. The child screams and runs. You've maintained your reputation. You write in your journal. No actual illness. Ghost in liver. Dance powders. Fire barrel ritual. One child emotionally damaged minor. You sketch the blacksmith mid-hiccup. As dusk falls. Walk the perimeter of the village. Not because you need to. Just because it feels like someone should. The fields are quiet. A pair of cows glance up from chewing and blink slowly. Unimpressed by your silhouette, the wind carries the faint scent of smoke and stew. Someone somewhere is laughing again. You realize this is becoming a pattern. Healthy town. Superstitious people. One beaked man pretending to hold it all together. And yet, it works. Somehow. Maybe the rituals do matter not because they cure anything, but because they give people something to do. Something to believe in. Maybe that's your job. Maybe it always was. You return home to find herbs asleep in your cot. You push him off gently. He snorts, unimpressed, and curls up beside the chamber pot, which he has now adopted. You lie down, mask on the chair, gloves folded neatly, feeling like a very tired statue. You whisper into the quiet, still no plague. You're not sure if you're relieved or disappointed. You wake up with a headache and a goat standing on your chest. Herbs is staring at you with the vacant intensity of a creature that has never respected personal space. His hoof is precisely on your sternum. which medically speaking is not ideal. You grunt. He does not move. Eventually, you wiggle out from beneath him like a man escaping a low-budget exorcism and start your day with the realization that you've now officially binged. Come by your only co-worker, you splash cold water on your face, wince at the staleness of your tunic, and dress for your rounds. Today's blend for the mask includes chamomile and a pinch of ashes, which you added for dramatic flair. The result is mildly smoky and a little sad, which fits the tone of your morning perfectly. You're barely out the door when you hear the latest crisis. The tavern has a rumor. Not an outbreak, not a rash, not a mysterious swelling, just a rumor. Someone said they overheard someone say they saw someone who heard about a cousin sneezing from the next village over, possibly 2 weeks ago. This alone has caused a spike in what can only be called speculative paranoia. You arrive at the tavern to find 5 townspeople loudly debating whether sneezing can travel through walls. A woman insists that the disease rides on spirits. A man counters that the nose only runs when the soul is fleeing. The logic is bad, but the commitment is impressive. You attempt to speak. You raise your gloved hand. Silence falls. You say sneezing is not contagious unless accompanied by other things. They nod solemnly. One man asks, like frogs. You do not answer. You simply write in your notebook, group hysteria index rising, frog logic prevalent. Later, at the apothecary, you find the man brewing a concoction called anti-sneeze oil. You ask what's in it. He replies, mostly anxiety. You nod. You ask for a vial. By midday, you're summoned to the village square. A dispute has broken out between 2 merchants. One accuses the other of harboring plague rats. The accused points to his cart of turnips and says, these are clean. The cart is indeed full of vegetables and nothing else. You perform a formal inspection. You lift turnips, sniff the straw, and wave a sprig of rosemary around like a tiny, confused priest. Eventually, you declare the cart free of rats and make a vague statement about divine providence. The crowd disperses. Historians still argue whether public rituals in plague times served as health measures or social theater. You no longer argue. You simply perform. That afternoon, you find yourself invited, yes, actually invited to visit a household for tea. This is a first. You arrive. Mask off. Hands washed. Posture alert. The family serves you a small bowl of barley tea and a scone so hard it might count as a blunt object. You sip politely. The tea is hot and earthy. The scone cracks on impact still. You feel oddly honored. They ask you if the town is safe. You pause. You consider the truth. That no one is sick. That everyone is anxious. That fear itself has become the only real contagion. You say, yes, for now. They thank you like you've offered them a month of peace. You leave with 2 eggs and a handful of herbs wrapped in cloth. You add them to your growing pile of goodwill. You return to your annex, now home to a goat, a pile of cracked scones, 5 vials of dubious oil, 1 barely functional bed, and you. The face of reassurance in an age of question marks. You update your journal. No. Confirmed illness. Sneezing rumor escalated. Frogs debated. Public faith remains intact. You draw a turnip. Label it exonerated. That evening, his storm rolls in. Thunder grumbles like a displeased monk. And rain pelts the village with the urgency of guilt. You sit by the window, watching droplets slide down the warped glass. The wind howls through the cracks in the wall. You light a candle, which flickers like it's reconsidering its life choices. Herbs has taken up residence in the corner, snoring softly. You try not to envy his uncomplicated worldview. You think about how many days you've been here. How many False alarms. How many suspicious vegetables? You wonder if you'll ever actually fight the plague, or if your legacy will be that man who kept everyone just scared enough to behave. And maybe that's something. You lie in bed, listening to the storm's lullaby of drips and distant clatters. You close your eyes and whisper your now nightly ritual. Still no plague. But tonight, for the first time, you add, still, needed. You wake to the rhythmic tap-tap of water dripping onto your forehead from a leak in the ceiling. It's not elegant. It's not symbolic. It's just wet. You slide out of bed like a reluctant ghost and place an old bowl under the leak, which only seems to encourage it. Herbs the goat snorts in his sleep. Outside, the rain has eased to a moody drizzle, but everything smells like wet wool and unresolved tension. You dress slowly, as though putting on your uniform will somehow give structure to a day already dissolving into puddles. Your gloves are still damp from yesterday, and your cloak carries the faint tang of lightning and old onions. You rest in a mask with a mixture of dried clove, fennel, and pine bark. Today's scent is forest funeral with a hint of pantry. As you step outside, the town greets you with a mood somewhere between soggy and suspicious. A woman immediately stops you, her concern. Her neighbor is drying clothes inside the house. She whispers this like it's a war crime. You nod, scribble. Cloth humidity paranoia escalating, and carry on. Your first real task arrives quickly. A council member wants to see you. You expect a complaint, possibly about your goat. Instead, he leads you to the town records office. More accurately, a damp stone chamber filled with scrolls, ledger books, and a bored-looking clerk chewing on a quill. Start documenting. The councilman says, for posterity. And so you are now responsible for plague records. Even though there is no plague, you spend the next hour creating an elaborate filing system. You divide scrolls into columns. Date, symptoms, treatment administered, outcome. You fill out one entry. Patient number 003, symptoms, none. Treatment, listened attentively. Outcome, continued existence. The clerk peers over your shoulder. Shall I file that under miracles? You stare at him. He shrugs and goes back to chewing. Soon, others begin arriving, not sick, just inquisitive. Some want to know if headaches mean the plague is browsing. One man insists his dreams are prophetic and that he dreamt of coughing geese. You recommend sleeping with the window closed and not taking geese personally. Midday brings a young woman who's developed an intense fear of her own breath. What if it's poisonous? She asks. You suggest a few calming herbs, like chamomile, and not reading poetry after dinner. You document a visit in your leisure. Diagnosis, existential wind. Treatment, hot tea and avoidance of mirrors. Historians still argue whether early documentation helped or merely served as something to do when there were no corpses to measure. You now understand why that debate exists. By mid-afternoon, your pages are a delicate ballet of imagined symptoms and enthusiastic cures. You're building a museum of what might happen, starring people with very active imaginations and very few actual illnesses. To break the monotony, you conduct a field survey of the local chickens. You visit 3 coops, examine for hens, and nearly step on a rooster with a vendetta. Your conclusion: unconcerned poultry, slightly aggressive, plague risk, theoretical. Back at the annex, you dry your gloves over a candle while sipping vinegar diluted in water, the closest thing you have to wine. Herbs eyes your cup and looks away in disappointment. You add to your journal: no physical illness, emotional discomfort high. Town now writing down its anxieties in pen. You sketch the rooster and give it devil horns for artistic flair. Later, while walking through the market square, you overhear someone say, "He keeps the plague away just by watching." You do not correct them, because deep down, part of you wants to believe it too. You pass the old well and pause. You remember your first day here, peering into its depth like a metaphor. It hasn't changed, but you have. You're still not sure if you're a doctor, a mascot, or a full-time anxiety manager, but you are undeniably something. That night, the rain returns. You sit by the window with your ledger, flipping through pages of almost sickness and near convictions. You wonder if future readers will believe any of it. Maybe one will laugh at coughing geese. Maybe one will think you saved them. You blow out the candle, pull the blanket over your shoulders, and listen to the familiar creak of your cot. Still no plague, you whisper, then, with a small smile. Still no quiet either. You wake, in the dim half-light of dawn, to the muffled clatter of your own thoughts, echoing faintly in the low, damp chamber you've come to call home. Your bones are tired in that slow, settling way that feels older than your years. There's no emergency waiting, no summons or knock at the door. Just the steady realization that you become part of the background hum of the town, a fixture like the moss on the well or the squeaky S. Out on the council hall, still, you sit up, stretch slowly, and brace yourself for the chore of existing in full costume. It takes longer now. The gloves don't slip on quite so easily. The seams of your cloak catch on everything. Your mask, now slightly warped from the persistent moisture, squeaks faintly when you tighten the straps. The scent of dried herbs today, its motto, sage. And a crumbling petal of something unidentifiable wraps round you like a memory. That's overstayed its welcome. You step outside and find the streets unusually quiet. No shouting vendors, no loitering gossips, no goats in trouble. Even herbs seem subdued, lying beneath the eave of the annex, chewing contemplatively on a stick. You nod to him, as if acknowledging a fellow professional in the business of simply being noticed. Your assignment for the day is less a task and more a vague obligation. Review the burial records and co. Infirm which deaths were plague adjacent. This might be helpful if there were any actual deaths to review. Instead, you're handed a scroll of unrelated passings: a man who fell from a ladder while drunk, a woman who choked on a salted plum, and someone who was kicked by a mule described only as temperamental. You scan the names slowly, feeling less like a doctor and more like an archivist of improbable accidents. You decide to make notes anyway. You write in the margins: no fever, no pustules, just gravity and bad luck. The townsfolk begin to trickle through the square, peeking at you from behind barrels and door frames. They don't avoid you like they once did. Some even nod. You've become familiar, not friendly, but familiar, the kind of odd-figure children point at with curiosity rather than fear. One little boy walks past holding his mother's hand and whispers. He keeps the cough away. You don't respond, but you feel the words settle in your chest like a slow ember. You visit the churchyard where the gravedigger, an old man with no teeth and a sense of humor as dry as communion bread, offers you stale bread and news. Still quiet, he says, "You're doing your job too well." You both laugh softly at the irony of being thanked for solving a problem that hasn't happened. He scratches his head. Some folks say that's enough. Just being ready, you nod. There's a strange comfort in hearing it spoken aloud. On your way back, you stop at the baker's. He hands you a cracked biscuit without making eye contact, and you take it with a small bow. Across the street, a woman waters herbs and says, loudly enough for you to hear, "He looks thinner. Someone ought to feed the man." You pretend not to notice, but the warmth of being noticed settles awkwardly in your gut. Where pride and hunger often wrestle, historians still argue whether plague doctors had medical authority or were simply hired symbols of reassurance. As you pass by the fountain where someone's tied a ribbon for good luck, you wonder if being a symbol is enough. If your silence, your presence, your slow walks and somber mask are what's holding this town together more than any tincture or poultice ever could. You think about how no one's sick, and how no one wants to admit they're still afraid. You return to your quarters and sit on the edge of your cot. The boards creaking beneath you like they're tired too. Herbs nudges your knee. You offer him the last of the biscuit. He sniffs it, licks it once, and walks away. Figures dot you right in your journal with slow, even strokes. 12 days. No plague. Just people learning to breathe again. You don't draw anything this time. You just sit there, holding the quill, staring at the wax dripping down your candle like it's trying to remember where it came from. The room is quiet, and for once, you don't mind the silence. You wake with the slow realization that your back has become a historical record of the cot's every curve, groove, and moral failing. The stiffness in your shoulders suggests you've been sleeping, like someone bracing for an earthquake that never comes. You stretch without enthusiasm, roll your neck until it cracks like an old floorboard, and glance toward the corner where your coat hangs limp and tired, as if it, too, is growing weary of the performance. Herbs lifts his head from beneath a torn blanket, chews thoughtfully on his own beard, and sneezes once, not dramatically, but with just enough force to make you pause. You stare at him. He stares back after a moment. He returns to chewing, crisis averted. For now, the town council has summoned you again, which always feels less like an invitation and more like being dragged into a conversation halfway through a disagreement. You arrive at the hall to find 3 members arguing over your contract. Apparently, there's confusion over whether your pay is due weekly, monthly, or based on actual plague density. You stand silently as they bicker, hands folded, mask on, exuding what you hope is the aura of quiet, dignified menace. Eventually, one of them offers you a coin pouch with exactly 4 copper pieces and a turnip inside. You nod slowly, take it, and do not ask questions. You never ask questions when the answer might include root vegetables as currency. Back in the square, people seem calmer today. Children play near the fountain, their laughter light and unburdened. A woman carries a basket of flowers humming, something off-key but warm. The air feels less tense, less thick with unspoken dread. It's as though, despite no real evidence, people have collectively decided that the worst has passed or never arrived and that life can resume its slow rhythm of small worries and sour bread. You conduct your usual rounds, inspecting imaginary risks. The candlemaker has reorganized her workshop and asks if good airflow is enough to keep out bad spirits. You nod. She rewards you with a wax figurine that vaguely resembles a bird. It's you. She says, you tuck it into your satchel, beside yesterday's pastry and the dried beetroot that's now serving as a paperweight. At the apothecary, you're shown a jar labeled pestilence powder. You ask what it's for. He shrugs and says, probably for show. You admire the honesty. He gives you a small packet, just in case. It smells like regret and dried basil. Historians still debate whether plague doctors were paid fairly, if at all. You can now confirm that payment often arrives late, wrapped in burlap, and includes unsolicited vegetables. You update your ledger accordingly. Received payment, turnip non-negotiable. Value unclear. As the sun slants low across the rooftops, casting golden light on the stone pots, you pass the old well and pause. The wood frame is damp from last night's rain. You sit on its edge and take off your mask. The cool air hits your face like a forgotten memory. For the first time in days, you breathe deeply. It smells like old dust, fresh bread, and the faint trace of wood smoke curling from chimneys. A boy approaches quietly and hands you a folded piece of parchment. You open it to find a drawing. A stick figure with a long nose and a goat beside it, both smiling. There's no signature. You look up, but he's already vanished down the alley. You smile, just a little, and fold the drawing into your journal between 2 pages about phantom sneezing and suspicious soap. That night, you sit by your window with a crust of bread and a bowl of broth. It's thin but hot, you sip. Slowly, watching, the stars emerge one by one, indifferent and eternal. The village below is quiet. No coughing, no shouting, just the low hum of peace slowly rebuilding itself. You glance at Ops, who's now sleeping on your bed again, entirely unapologetic. You leave him there and settle into your chair. Legs stretched out, arms folded. You write in your journal. Still no plague, just overdue ages, excessive turnips, and unexpected drawings. And just before you blow out the candle, you whisper into the quiet, almost to yourself, I think we're going to be okay. You wake with sunlight on your face and for once no immediate sense of dread. No hoof on your chest. No dripping ceiling. No urgent knock or panicked townsperson holding up a rash made of beet juice. Just quiet morning light, soft and gold, filtering through the warped glass like it belongs here. Even Herbs is still asleep, curled in an uncharacteristically graceful shape at the foot of your cot. For the first time in weeks, your first thought is not about illness, or symptoms, or trying to appear useful. It's about breakfast. You dress without the usual hesitation. The cloak still feels heavy, but less like a burden and more like habit. Now, you don't rush. You tighten the mask straps slowly, adjusting them until the beak sits just right. And you pause in the mirror long enough to realize you stop thinking of yourself without it. It's no longer something you wear. It's simply who you are here. There's no task on your schedule today, which should be relaxing but somehow makes you more restless. You walk the town anyway, hands folded neatly behind your back, nodding. At familiar faces, the baker waves first, then the candlemaker, then the children by the fountain. You realize, as you pass the churchyard and the crooked market stalls, that you no longer need to perform authority. You simply carry it now. At the edge of the village, near the low stone wall where wild herbs grow in stubborn patches, you sit on a sun-warmed rock and remove your mask. Just for a moment, the breeze is light and dry, brushing against your face like something trying to remember your name. You close your eyes and let it pass. Then you hear it, the faint, unmistakable sound of someone sneezing. It's not dramatic, just a single dry sneeze, but the silence that follows is louder than the sound itself. You glance toward the road. A young man is wiping his nose with a cloth, eyes wide, clearly aware of the significance. He locks eyes with you, panic already blooming on his face. You stand slowly and approach, calm, steady, rehearsed. He insists it was dust. You nod. You agree. It probably was. You offer him a small pouch of herbs and tell him to drink more water. You speak quietly, firmly, like someone who has said this 100 times before. Even though it's only ever been a drill, you write it down later as an unverified sneeze. Dust suspected. No secondary symptoms, prescribed reassurance. Still, the atmosphere shifts. Word spreads faster than you do. People glance over shoulders. Conversations dip when you pass. A merchant quietly hangs a dried garlic braid on his cart. The tavern pours fewer mugs than usual. The air, once light and forgetful, begins to feel measured again. You return to the annex, close the door, and sit beside the ledger, now thick with pages of anxious imagination. You add one more entry, just in case. Historians still argue whether plague began with a bang or a whisper. But here, You know it begins with a sneeze and the space that follows it. The shared breath held just a little too long. You take your time cleaning the mask today. You reline it with fresh rosemary and angelica root. You sharpen the edge of your tone and revisit your posture in the mirror. If it's coming, you'll be ready. But it doesn't come. Not today. The young man returns by dusk, cheeks flushed from walking. He says he feels fine. He's sure now it was hay in the wind. You believe him. You want to believe him. So you do. You write in your journal. Fear is a fever that burns without cause. Still no plague. Just echoes. You sit by the window long after the candle has burned down to a stop. The stars blink into view, slow and tired. Herbs breathes, evenly in the corner. Outside, the town settles back into its uneasy rhythm. And you, the doctor of almost something, begin to wonder if all this waiting is itself a kind of cure, not for disease, but for forgetting that things can be calm again. That it's okay to exhale. So you do, and you let the night hold you there, in the space between what was imagined and what never arrived. You wake to the sound of church bells, not the frenzied clang of emergency, but the slow, uneven toll of a morning that doesn't quite know what to do with itself. It's a gray day, heavy with clouds but dry, the kind of weather that makes people mutter about omens even if they don't believe in them. You rise slowly, not from exhaustion exactly, but from the weight of so many days lived in quiet repetition. The room is still, lit by a pale, watery light through the warped glass. Herbs is awake before you for once, chewing the leg of your stool with the intensity of someone deep in philosophical thought. You dress without thinking now. The act of layering fabric and fastening leather has become as unconscious as breathing. The mask goes on last, worn smooth at the edges, the eye holes a little foggy from weeks of your own breath. It's not discomfort anymore, it's ritual. Like a priest with his robes, a knight with his armor. You don't feel ready without it. There's no clear agenda for the day. But you've learned that structure is an illusion worth maintaining. You walk the village slowly, tracing familiar pots, the fountain, the church, the baker, already sweeping flour from the doorstep. You nod at the apothecary, who finally nods back, a full nod. Not a flinch, not a grimace, a gesture of respect. It's strange, being respected for something that never happened. Stranger still to realize you've earned a dot at mid-morning. A boy runs up, breathless, to tell you there's someone new in town, a traveler from the next village over, possibly farther. He sneezed once. The boy says this with the urgency of someone announcing the return of the moon. You follow the boy past the square, past the tavern, to the edge of town. A man is sitting under a tree, sipping something from a cracked cup. He looks up and blinks at your mask, not with fear, just surprise. You ask him, slowly, carefully, if he's ill. He says no. Just dust in his throat. He's passing through. Heard the village was peaceful. He thought he might stay a few days. Maybe he'll prepare the mill. You study him the way a sculptor studies a crack in the stone. Nothing alarming. No fever. No. Trembling. His cough is dry and irregular, like a habit rather than a symptom. Still, you log it. That afternoon, the wind picks up, carrying the faint scent of ash from someone burning old straw. The smoke drifts through the square, curling round corners and sneaking under doors. You see people wrinkle their noses, glance over shoulders. You feel the pulse of tension that always follows invisible things, and so you do what you were hired to do. You walk the village again slowly, visibly. You check the air. You ask after neighbors. You linger at the well. You speak to the traveler once more, offer him herbs, water, directions to the cleanest outhouse. You tell him where the wind usually blows and which benches are least likely to collapse. He laughs. You don't dot by nightfall. The town has settled again. Like flour after kneading, you eat quietly in your room some stale cheese, have a plum, a hill of bread softened in broth. Herb snores beside you, curled up in a nest of your old cloak. The stool is now three-legged, but still standing. You add one final note to your journal. A sneeze is stranger. The air changed, but we didn't. And that, more than anything, feels like an ending. You lie on the cot without removing your mask, staring at the ceiling through the blur of dried herbs and leather seams. You don't feel triumphant. You don't feel tired. You feel steady. Like the beak on your face and the slow shuffle of your boots have created something larger than your rhythm. A ritual, a warning, maybe even a comfort. The candle burns low. You listen to the sounds of the town, the creak of doors closing, the faint lull of distant lullabies, the rustle of someone shaking out a blanket. Nothing sudden, nothing fearful, just life returning to its shape. You exhale, long and even, still no plague. You whisper, then, with a breath that feels like closing a chapter, still here. Tonight, you've wandered through a world suspended in anticipation, a village poised on the edge of calamity that never quite arrived. You've stepped into the boots of someone who wakes each day not to fight disaster, but to wait with dignity in its shadow. You felt the ache of heavy cloth and tired shoulders, the weight of a mask that hides more than it protects, and the odd comfort of repetition in the face of uncertainty. You've learned that there is power in patience. That quiet presence can be its own form of healing. That being prepared, even in the absence of danger, is a kind of service. You've witnessed how fear moves not just through bodies, but through whispers, through gestures, through the space between a sneeze and a stare. And you stood still in that space, holding it open, holding it steady, so others could go on. Tonight, the wind outside is soft, the air is clear. The town you've watched over sleeps without knowing you're still listening. That, perhaps, is the best measure of your success, not in the crises you faced, but in the ones that never had to arrive. So now, let your breath slow, let your shoulders sink. The mask is off, the door is closed. The fire burns low. You've done enough. You've kept the balance. You are no longer needed, but you are, and in the quiet that follows, there is peace, not because the world is safe, but because someone stood still long enough to make it feel that way. Sleep deeply. Now your story can. Rest and tomorrow will come. Just as gently, just as strange, just as free of plague as today.